Welcome to the Empowerment Hour. I'm your host, Joss Blake, and today we're embarking on a profound journey into one of humanity's most sought-after states, inner peace. But here's the thing. Almost everything you think you know about finding peace is probably wrong. Take a deep breath and imagine, right now, millions of people are desperately chasing peace in all the wrong places. They're climbing corporate ladders, accumulating wealth, seeking social status, all believing that somewhere at the end of these pursuits lies the tranquility they crave. But what if I told you that the very act of chasing peace in these external forms is what's keeping it just out of reach? Today we're going to explore timeless wisdom that cuts through these misconceptions like a sword through silk. We'll journey from ancient monasteries to modern neuroscience labs, from the courts of princes to the minds of meditation masters. And by the end of our time together, you'll understand not just what peace really is, but how to cultivate it in your own life, starting today. Interested in listening to more such podcasts on inner peace, calmness, and being Zen in modern times? Tune in to Scoob, your AI-powered podcast studio. Download the app now from App Store and Play Store, and take the first step to be a better you. So settle in, and let's begin this exploration of what it truly means to be peaceful. Let's start with a hard truth that might sting a little. If you're looking for peace through money, you're barking up the wrong tree entirely. Now, before you switch off thinking this is some anti-materialist rant, hear me out. The quest for peace through wealth is one of humanity's most persistent and misguided endeavors. We live in a culture that whispers constantly in our ears, just a little more money, and then you'll be free. Then you'll have peace. But here's what actually happens to people who chase peace through monetary means. Most fail to amass the fortune they envision. They spend their entire lives in a state of anxious striving, always just one promotion, one deal, one windfall away from that elusive peace. But what about those who do make it? What about those who achieve that financial freedom we all dream about? Their story tells a different tale entirely. They often recount how they spent the early part of their lives accumulating riches, only to spend the latter half attempting to prevent others from taking it away. Think about that for a moment. They find no peace in either pursuit. The accumulation brings stress, and the protection brings paranoia. I find it fascinating that some of the wealthiest people in our world eventually reach a point where they struggle to find recipients willing to take their money. Why? Because there's a growing ethical consciousness in society. We're beginning to scrutinize the methods behind money-making, and this scrutiny reflects a growing moral awareness. There's hope in this development. Perhaps in the future, society will no longer sell respectability to those guilty of significant moral transgressions by helping them spend ill-gotten wealth. Religious institutions, educational establishments, charitable organizations, they're all beginning to refuse to overlook unethical business methods. And this leaves those who've prioritized money over morals to confront something they've been running from their entire lives: solitude. But money isn't the only false god we worship in our quest for peace. Social prestige is another seductive mistress. Whether you're inside the elite circles, fearing exclusion, or outside them, desperately aspiring for admission, peace remains elusive. I've observed this phenomenon countless times, people torturing themselves trying to maintain their position in social hierarchies, or exhausting themselves trying to climb them. The same applies to political prominence. Whether the office is attained through inheritance in monarchies or through democratic election, achieving high political office doesn't grant peace. Yes, it's rare, and considered a significant honor, but honor and peace are entirely different beasts. Here's the beautiful truth that cuts through all of this external seeking. Peace is not dependent on money, societal status, or political success, and thank goodness for that. If it were, only a tiny fraction of humanity would ever have the chance to experience it. Instead, true peace arises from something far more accessible and democratic: a conscience that is clear of wrongdoing toward both the divine and humanity. This places peace within everyone's reach: the financially struggling, the socially marginalized, those without political influence. In making peace accessible through a clear conscience, we see a brilliant aspect of universal design, offering solace and peace to every heart willing to embrace it. Now let me take you on a journey to a place far removed from the noise of our modern world, a modest monastery nestled in the heart of a verdant forest near a tranquil lake. This is where we meet a young Zen monk whose struggle will illuminate something profound about the nature of peace itself. This monastery was sparsely populated with just a handful of seasoned monks guiding eager but inexperienced novices. Among the most crucial practices was meditation, sitting silently for extended periods, eyes gently shut, attempting to center mind and soul. Our young monk was struggling mightily. His mind was easily led astray, and his inability to focus troubled him greatly, provoking intense frustration. When he brought this struggle to his mentor, the elder monk posed a simple yet profound question. Do you understand what is truly causing your anger? Listen to the young monk's response, because it might sound familiar. As soon as I close my eyes to meditate, there's always someone moving around, breaking my concentration. I become irritated that they would be so inconsiderate, knowing full well that I am meditating. Sometimes a cat or small animal walks by, causing a distraction. Then even the simple swaying of branches in the wind or the persistent chirping of birds can stir my irritation. I am unable to find serenity here. The wise elder pointed out something crucial. Each source of anger seemed to be intensifying rather than diminishing through meditation. He advised that the key was not to let external factors disturb inner calm. So our young monk sought tranquility by exploring other areas. He found what seemed like a quiet haven at the lake's edge, unfurling his mat to meditate, believing the serenity of the lake would be conducive to his practice. Yet soon he was disturbed by the splashing and calling of birds descending upon the water's surface. Despite the lake being quieter than his previous spot, interruptions persisted. But then, our persistent monk had an idea. He spotted a small boat moored at the edge of a diminutive pier. I could row this boat to the center of the lake, he thought, where surely there will be nothing and no one to hinder my meditation. And you know what? It worked. In the center of the lake, the world around him quieted to just a gentle, embracing silence. Here, he immersed himself in uninterrupted meditation, achieving the peace that had previously eluded him. Day after day, he returned to this sanctuary, his practice flourishing in the still waters. But here's where this story gets interesting, and where it connects to something much deeper about peace itself. The young monk found his peace by physically removing himself from all external disturbances. He found silence, and in that silence, he found peace. But this raises a crucial question. Does peace always require silence? This story beautifully illustrates our initial approach to finding peace. We think we need to control our environment, eliminate all disturbances, find the perfect external conditions. And sometimes this works. Sometimes we do need to retreat, to find our quiet center away from the chaos. But what happens when we can't row to the center of the lake? What happens when life demands that we find peace in the midst of the storm, not in its absence? This brings us to one of the most fascinating intersections in human knowledge, where ancient wisdom meets modern neuroscience, where the insights of a prince who became a Buddha align perfectly with our current understanding of how the brain learns and adapts. 2,500 years ago, a young man named Siddhartha, who would later be known as the Buddha, made discoveries about human nature that neuroscientists are only now beginning to fully appreciate. His insights into what we now call reward-based learning and the nature of genuine versus superficial happiness are nothing short of revolutionary. In the beginning stages of meditation instruction, there's a strong focus on drawing attention to the breath and bringing it back whenever the mind wanders. While this practice appears uncomplicated, it actually contradicts our innate reward-based learning mechanisms. You see, our brains are wired to seek out experiences that bring immediate gratification, and sitting quietly, watching our breath doesn't exactly trigger a dopamine rush. The Buddha understood this principle deeply, repeatedly urging his followers to observe cause and effect, to clearly understand the results of their actions. But here's where it gets interesting. He noticed that what most people call happiness might actually be leading them towards suffering, not away from it. Consider this radical perspective. What others call happiness, that the noble ones declare to be suffering. What others call suffering, that the noble ones have found to be happiness. This isn't just philosophical wordplay. It's a profound observation about how we often confuse excitement with genuine contentment. A Burmese meditation master named Sayadaw U Pandita taught that people often confuse excitement with happiness, despite excitement leading us towards suffering rather than away from it. Think about this in your own life. How often do we chase the excitement of a new purchase, a new relationship, a new achievement, only to find ourselves yearning for more when the initial thrill wears off? The Buddha traced this by examining fundamental processes of reinforcement learning. He observed that engaging in sensual pleasures increases one's craving for them, offering only fleeting satisfaction and ultimately burning the individual with a fever of desires. For instance, indulging in romantic fantasies might provide temporary elation, but it leaves one yearning for more. Similarly, those who resort to substances experience similar cycles of desire and temporary enjoyment. But here's what makes the Buddha's story so compelling. He wasn't speaking from theoretical knowledge. According to historical narratives, he began life as a prince. When his mother conceived him, seers predicted that he would either become a formidable ruler or a venerated spiritual figure. His father, wanting to keep him worldly, attempted to steer him away from spiritual pursuits by shielding him from adversity and indulging him in every possible luxury and desire. This strategy had the opposite effect. It was only after exploring all available forms of gratification that the Buddha realized they failed to provide enduring contentment, merely intensifying his craving for more. He comprehended the self-perpetuating nature of this cycle and learned how to break free from it. Listen to how he described his awakening process. "So long, monks, as I did not directly know, as they really are, the gratification in the world as gratification. I did not claim to have awakened to the unsurpassed perfect enlightenment in this world. But when I directly knew all this, then I claimed to have awakened. The knowledge and vision arose in me. Unshakable is the liberation of my mind." Now, fast forward to modern neuroscience, and we find remarkable validation of these ancient insights. We now understand that our brains release dopamine, the reward chemical, not just when we experience pleasure, but in anticipation of it. This creates cycles of craving and temporary satisfaction that mirror exactly what the Buddha observed. But here's the crucial insight. The Buddha discovered that true peace doesn't come from satisfying these cravings, but from understanding their nature so deeply that we're no longer enslaved by them. This is where meditation becomes not just a relaxation technique, but a profound rewiring of our relationship with desire itself. Following a recent retreat in Southern California, an artist approached a meditation teacher with a profound question that gets to the heart of what we're exploring today. The artist asked, "How should one observe a flower to maximize its essence for their art?" The response was this: by seeking to gain from the flower, we inadvertently detach from truly experiencing it. True connection requires letting go of any intent to exploit or derive benefit. Think about this for a moment. How often do we approach life with this grasping mentality? The artist confided that they had the same habit with friendships, always seeking what they could gain. While it's natural to derive benefits from friends, we miss the greater value of companionship by focusing solely on profit. Our culture seems conditioned to approach much of life, whether it's art, friendship, or even spiritual practice, with a utilitarian mindset. We call it pragmatism, but it's really a form of spiritual materialism. There's an idea that truth, when pursued, should yield immediate, measurable rewards. But genuine meditation and mindfulness go beyond expectations of reward. Meditation is about pausing and diving deep within, to be present with oneself and the surrounding world. In halting all activity to simply exist, we begin to truly see and understand our surroundings. Such understanding leads to inner peace and happiness, which are the true rewards, but they come only when we stop grasping for them. Mastering the art of pause allows us to develop deeper connections with everything, from friends to the simplicity of a flower. But here's the challenge. How do we apply this peace-centered approach in societies heavily focused on productivity and profit? Consider something as simple as a smile. A smile offered without ulterior motives reflects inner joy and authenticity, unlike a mere facade of diplomacy. A genuine smile symbolizes self-awareness and sovereignty. It comes from a place of fullness, not need. This principle extends to everything we do. Can poetry or painting encapsulate ideas like pausing, embracing aimlessness, or living in the moment without explicitly being labeled as art? The answer is profound. Every action steeped in mindfulness transforms into art. Whether it's the cultivation of lettuce or a walk to the supermarket, each task becomes painting or poetry in its own right. Art isn't confined to traditional forms such as painting or writing. Rather, it's an ever-present act of creation when executed with awareness and poise. Think about this in your own life. When you wash dishes with full attention, feeling the warm water, the texture of the soap, the weight of each plate, that becomes a meditation. When you listen to a friend with complete presence, not formulating your response while they're speaking, that becomes an act of love. When you walk down the street noticing the play of light and shadow, the expressions on strangers' faces, the rhythm of your own footsteps, that becomes a moving meditation. Regardless of whether we are actively creating traditional art, we constantly contribute beauty, joy, and tranquility to the world through mindful living. Instead of discussing art in conventional terms, expressing our inherent peace through mindful existence allows our creativity to flourish naturally. Through the art of peaceful existence, we offer our creativity to the world, ultimately serving and enriching the lives of others. To truly embody peace is to facilitate artistic expression effortlessly, allowing it to emerge naturally and positively impact the community at large. This is the difference between forced peace and natural peace. Forced peace requires perfect external conditions: silence, isolation, control. Natural peace emerges from presence, from the ability to be fully here, fully now, regardless of circumstances. Now, we come to perhaps one of the most misunderstood aspects of finding peace: forgiveness. Many people resist forgiveness because they've been taught to think about it all wrong. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. A middle-aged man once expressed reluctance to forgive someone who had hurt him because he perceived forgiveness as relinquishing a hold over the person who caused harm. He believed it allowed them to evade accountability. This is one of our most common and damaging misconceptions about forgiveness. Many people mistakenly equate forgiveness with forgetting, fearing that if they forgive, they will inadvertently let go of the lessons learned from past harm and make themselves susceptible to being hurt again. But here's the truth. It is not necessary to cling to emotional distress or bitterness as a reminder of past injustices. Holding on to such negativity doesn't keep the memory of being wronged alive in any useful way. Instead, it serves to remind us constantly of our pain. It's like carrying a burning coal in your pocket to remind yourself that fire burns. You already know fire burns, but now you're just burning yourself. Let me be crystal clear about what forgiveness is and isn't. Forgiveness is not about absolving others of their responsibility for their actions, or expecting a change in their behavior. It's not about condoning bad behavior or pretending something didn't happen. Rather, forgiveness is a personal tool for freeing oneself from the emotional burdens of past hurt and paving the way for inner peace. Forgiveness is meant for the one who forgives, not necessarily for the wrongdoer. This is crucial to understand. Many believe that forgiveness requires the perpetrator to express regret or offer an apology, or that some form of justice or punishment must occur first. But in reality, justice might take an exceedingly long time to manifest, if it ever does at all. So what happens while we wait for justice? Do we remain prisoners of our own resentment? Do we allow someone else's actions to continue poisoning our peace years, or even decades after the initial harm? This is where the liberation of forgiveness becomes not just beneficial, but essential for our own well-being. Forgiveness is less about retribution and more about freeing oneself from the inner turmoil of resentment. Now, I want to be careful here. Outrage can indeed spur positive change. The anger we feel at injustice can motivate us to fight for what's right. But unbridled anger, anger that we carry like a toxic burden, is merely a superficial expression of power that lacks substance. True inner strength emerges when we harness our anger constructively, enabling us to take meaningful action and firmly oppose injustice when necessary. There's a profound difference between fighting from a place of hatred and fighting from a place of love. Here's a personal example that illustrates this beautifully. A peace activist discovered that when he publicly opposed wars in Central America, his initial anger alienated others, much like his son avoiding his fury. As soon as he forgave the colonel responsible for some of this resentment, his actions were motivated by love rather than rage. He pursued his activism out of genuine care for the people of Guatemala, driven by the desire to prevent their suffering. The change in effectiveness was remarkable. When we act from anger, we create resistance. When we act from love, even when opposing injustice, we create the possibility for transformation. But here's the deepest challenge with forgiveness. Our deep-rooted connection to past pain often hinders our capacity for it. With years of familiarity with our pain, we question our identity without it. Who would we be if we weren't the person who was wronged? Who would we be if we let go of this grievance that has become so central to our sense of self? Feelings of resentment and self-righteousness, though burdensome, become ingrained in our sense of self. We identify with these emotions and sentiments, feeling resigned to the belief that this is simply who we are. Consequently, we may hold on to the perception of being wronged, even if it burdens us throughout our lives. This reluctance to let go and move beyond our past grievances can persist indefinitely. But here's what changes everything. When we realize that our peace is more important than our grievances, when we understand that forgiveness is not about them, but about us, we can begin the journey toward liberation. The path to peace through forgiveness isn't about becoming a doormat or pretending that harmful actions don't matter. It's about reclaiming our power from the past and stepping into a future where our happiness is no longer held hostage by someone else's actions. We're now going to explore what I like to call the alchemy of appreciation, the almost magical way that gratitude transforms not just our perspective, but our actual brain chemistry and physical health. The notion that thankfulness can have measurable advantages might seem surprising to some, but scientific research powerfully supports the idea that gratitude positively impacts our mental health, self-awareness, relationships, and overall sense of well-being. Let me share some fascinating research with you. In one study, participants were divided into two groups and asked to maintain journals. One group documented things they were grateful for, while the other group recorded instances of annoyance or frustration. Those in the gratitude group reported experiencing lower stress levels by the day's end. Just by shifting their focus from what annoyed them to what they appreciated, their entire physiology changed. Another impactful study involved college students plagued with racing thoughts and worries, something I suspect many of us can relate to. They were instructed to spend just 15 minutes before bedtime jotting down things they were thankful for. This simple exercise of gratitude journaling led to fewer intrusive thoughts and improved sleep quality. Now, if you want to experience these benefits firsthand, here's something you can try tonight. Keep a gratitude journal. Dedicate just 5 minutes each night to writing down what you're thankful for. If you want to evaluate the impact, note how much you sleep before starting this practice and compare it to your sleep patterns after a week of gratitude journaling. You might be amazed by the results. But why does this work? The answer lies in understanding what neuroscientists call the monkey mind versus the monk mind. Gratitude works wonders on the mind, particularly when it comes to countering the negative influences of the monkey mind, which tends to amplify feelings of unworthiness and negativity. The more balanced monk mind reminds us of the kindness and generous efforts others have shown us. Here's something beautiful. Recognizing these acts of kindness actually boosts our self-esteem. Why? Because diminishing our worth would also diminish the value of others' generosity toward us. When we acknowledge that others have been good to us, we implicitly acknowledge that we're worthy of that goodness. Gratitude aids in overcoming bitterness and pain, allowing us to redirect focus from jealousy to thankfulness. According to UCLA neuroscientist Alex Korb, it's nearly impossible to simultaneously focus on positive and negative emotions. When gratitude occupies our minds, dopamine, the brain's reward chemical, is released, encouraging us to seek out that feeling more often. This creates what researchers call a virtuous cycle. The more we seek gratitude, the more we discover things to be grateful for. It's as if gratitude trains our brain to notice the good things that were always there but previously invisible to us. The research on trauma and gratitude is particularly compelling. A study from 2006 revealed that Vietnam War veterans who exhibited high levels of gratitude experienced reduced incidences of PTSD. Whether it's a breakup, the loss of a loved one, or any emotional upheaval, gratitude serves as a powerful antidote to psychological suffering. But gratitude's impact extends far beyond mental well-being to physical health. Gratitude counteracts toxic emotions that contribute to inflammation, a factor linked to chronic diseases like heart disease. Studies indicate that people who practice gratitude not only feel healthier, but are also more inclined to engage in health-enhancing activities and seek medical care when needed. Dr. P. Murali Doraiswamy, head of the Division of Biologic Psychology at Duke University Medical Center, made a remarkable observation about gratitude's benefits. He suggested that if thankfulness were a drug, it would be a bestseller due to its health maintenance benefits across all major organ systems. Think about that. A single practice that benefits every system in your body with no negative side effects. If gratitude yields such significant benefits, increasing its presence in our daily lives ought to magnify these positive effects. This is where ancient wisdom and modern science converge beautifully. Monastic traditions have long emphasized gratitude for every aspect of life, not just the obviously good things. The Sutta Pitaka, a part of the Buddhist canon, advises monks to always remember and appreciate even the smallest deeds done for them, reinforcing an attitude of gratitude and thankfulness consistently. This isn't just spiritual practice, it's practical psychology. By cultivating gratitude, we nurture not only a healthier mind and body, but we also foster deeper connections and a life enriched with meaning and satisfaction. Embracing gratitude isn't merely a fleeting practice, it becomes a transformative journey of recognizing and savoring every blessing that life offers. The alchemy happens when we realize that gratitude doesn't require perfect circumstances. We can be grateful for the lesson in a difficulty, for the strength we discover in ourselves during challenges, for the love that surrounds us even in dark times. This is when gratitude becomes not just a practice, but a way of being that transforms everything it touches. Now I want to share some stories that will challenge everything you think you know about how to respond to aggression, violence, and malice. These aren't just philosophical concepts. They're real encounters that demonstrate the extraordinary power of peace in the face of hostility. Our first story involves Devadatta, an adversary of the Buddha, who devised a plan to take the Buddha's life. His method was both cunning and brutal. He intoxicated an elephant with alcohol, knowing the Buddha would encounter the elephant at a specific location along his usual route. Picture this scene. A massive elephant, drunk and enraged, was unleashed onto the road. Chaos erupted as everyone fled in terror. They shouted at the Buddha to run, to save himself, but he continued on his path with unwavering calmness. His loyal follower, Venerable Ananda, desperately tried to shield the Buddha from the impending danger. But the Buddha instructed Ananda to move aside. He knew that physical strength was no match for an incensed elephant. As the elephant charged toward him, head high, ears alert, trunk menacingly poised, something extraordinary happened. The Buddha emanated thoughts of loving kindness and compassion toward the animal, causing it to halt abruptly. Through sheer warmth and care radiated by the Buddha, The elephant's aggression was completely tamed. The Buddha extended his hand, palm facing the creature, transmitting what witnesses described as a surge of benevolent energy that led the elephant to kneel at his feet, serene and gentle. This encounter showcased the tremendous power of loving kindness in quelling violence and fury. But here's what's crucial to understand. The act of responding to aggression with aggression is a learned behavior, not an intrinsic one. When nurtured from a young age to be patient, kind, and gentle, loving kindness becomes an integral part of our existence. Conversely, if exposed to anger as our primary model, it becomes a habitual reaction. But here's the hopeful truth. Habits can be reformed at any stage of life. Individuals can train themselves to respond differently, embracing compassion over hostility. Let me share another powerful story that shows how this principle applies to verbal attacks and public humiliation. Rivals of the Buddha bribed a woman named Tsinka to publicly shame him. She deceitfully tied sticks under her clothes to feign pregnancy, then burst into one of his sermons attended by hundreds of people. In front of this large crowd, she boldly accused the Buddha, claiming he was responsible for her supposed pregnancy. Can you imagine the shock, the potential for scandal, the opportunity for his reputation to be destroyed? The Buddha's response was filled with tranquility and compassion. He addressed her calmly, stating simply, "Sister, only you and I know the truth of this matter." That's it. No defensiveness, no counterattack, no angry denial. Tsinka, taken aback by his calm response, stumbled as she departed, causing the false belly to unravel and the sticks to fall, exposing her deceit to everyone present. The crowd was furious and wanted to punish her for this attempted defamation, but the Buddha intervened and dissuaded them. No harm was wished upon her by the Buddha, who advised that understanding the Dhamma, the truth, was a better course of action. The result? Tsinka's character was transformed. She adopted kindness, gentleness, and a compassionate demeanor. Her attack on the Buddha became the catalyst for her own spiritual transformation. When faced with provocations or harm, sustaining thoughts of loving kindness toward the perpetrator can be incredibly empowering. The Buddha likened a person embodying loving kindness to the enduring earth. No amount of digging with tools could ever make the earth disappear. It remains unaffected, representing the resilience of a person anchored in loving kindness. Here's one more story that perfectly illustrates how this wisdom can be applied in everyday conflicts. There lived a man named Akasina, ironically nicknamed Not Getting Angry, though his temper was notoriously short. Intrigued by tales of the Buddha's unshakable calm and apparent absence of anger, Akasina decided to test him. In an attempt to provoke the Buddha, Akasina hurled insults and epithets at him. Once his tirade ceased, the Buddha posed a simple question. He asked about Akasina's practice of bringing gifts to friends and family. Akasina confirmed that he indeed brought gifts, but if they were refused, he simply took them back. The Buddha then illustrated, through this analogy, that the anger and insults Akasina brought were gifts that the Buddha chose not to accept. Therefore, the angry man was free to take them back. Think about the profound wisdom in this approach. Through patience, wisdom, and loving kindness, the Buddha invited reflection on the nature of giving and receiving angry words, transforming the perceived affront into an opportunity for compassionate understanding and change. These stories aren't just ancient tales. They're blueprints for how we can respond to the aggression, insults, and attacks we face in our own lives. The power isn't in the specific techniques, but in the underlying principle. When we remain centered in peace, we have access to responses that aggression simply cannot touch. As we near the end of our journey together today, I want to bring all these threads together into something practical, something you can take with you and begin implementing immediately in your life. We've explored how peace isn't found in external circumstances, not in money, status, or perfect conditions. We've seen how it's not dependent on silence or isolation, though sometimes we do need to retreat and find our center. We've discovered how ancient wisdom about reward-based learning aligns perfectly with modern neuroscience, showing us that what we often mistake for happiness might actually be leading us away from genuine contentment. We've learned about the art of presence, how observing without grasping, being fully here without agenda, transforms every activity into a form of meditation. We've explored how forgiveness liberates the forgiver, not necessarily the forgiven, and how gratitude literally rewires our brains for greater happiness and resilience. And perhaps most powerfully, we've seen how peace doesn't mean passivity, how loving kindness can be the most powerful response to aggression, transforming not just the situation, but often the aggressor themselves. But how do we integrate all of this? How do we move from understanding these concepts intellectually to embodying them in our daily lives? First, recognize that peace is not a destination but a practice. It's not something you achieve once and then possess forever. It's a way of being that you choose moment by moment, day by day. Start small. Tonight, try the gratitude practice we discussed. Just 5 minutes writing down what you're thankful for. Notice what happens to your stress levels, your sleep quality, your overall mood. When you encounter frustration tomorrow, and you will, remember the young monk and his journey from seeking external silence to finding internal peace. Ask yourself, what is truly causing my anger? Am I trying to control something outside myself instead of working with what's within my control? When someone treats you poorly, remember the Buddha's response to Akasina. Their anger, their insults, their negativity. These are gifts you don't have to accept. You can let them take their gifts back while remaining centered in your own peace. Practice the art of presence. When you're eating, just eat. When you're walking, just walk. When you're listening to someone, just listen. Notice how this simple presence transforms ordinary activities into moments of peace and connection. And remember that forgiveness is for you, not for them. When you're ready, and only when you're ready, you can choose to release yourself from the burden of resentment, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Here's what I've learned. Peace is both the most natural thing in the world and the most challenging to cultivate. It's natural because it's our true state beneath all the conditioning, all the striving, all the grasping. It's challenging because everything in our culture pulls us away from it. But once you begin to taste real peace, not the temporary relief that comes from getting what you want, but the deep contentment that comes from being fully present with what is, you'll understand why sages throughout history have considered it the greatest treasure. The path to peace doesn't require you to retreat to a monastery or spend years in meditation. It requires you to bring the qualities we've discussed, presence, gratitude, forgiveness, loving kindness, into whatever life you're already living. Your commute can become a meditation. Your conflicts can become opportunities to practice loving kindness. Your challenges can become invitations to practice forgiveness. Your ordinary moments can become occasions for gratitude. This is the real secret. Peace is always available, right here, right now. Not in some future moment when all your problems are solved, not in some other place where conditions are perfect, but here, in this moment, with things exactly as they are. The young monk found his peace in the center of the lake, but eventually, he would need to learn to carry that peace back to shore, back into the world of sounds and distractions and other people. That's the journey we're all on, learning to be peaceful not just in perfect conditions, but in the beautiful, messy, challenging reality of human life. And here's the beautiful thing. Every time you choose peace over reactivity, presence over distraction, gratitude over complaint, forgiveness over resentment, you're not just changing your own life. You're contributing to the peace of the world. You're becoming part of the solution to humanity's ancient quest for tranquility. The world needs your peace. It needs people who can remain centered in the midst of chaos, who can respond to aggression with love, who can find gratitude even in difficulty, who can forgive even when forgiveness seems impossible. This isn't just personal development. This is how we heal our world, one peaceful heart at a time. Before we close, I want to leave you with this thought. The peace you seek is not somewhere else, in some other circumstances, in some other version of yourself. It's here, now, available in this very moment. The young monk found it in the silence of the lake's center. The Buddha found it in facing an enraged elephant with loving kindness. You can find it in whatever moment you're experiencing right now, whether it's peaceful or chaotic, joyful or difficult, silent or noisy. Peace is not the absence of challenges. Peace is the presence of something deeper, a way of being that remains steady regardless of external circumstances. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of peace. I encourage you to take what resonates with you and leave what doesn't. Begin where you are, with what you have. Start with one small practice, one moment of presence, one choice for peace over reactivity. And remember, in a world that often seems filled with anger, division, and chaos, your commitment to inner peace is not selfish. It's one of the most generous gifts you can offer. Looking to further feed your brain with such insights? Download Scoob, your one-stop destination for the most loved AI-powered podcasts, available on the App Store and Play Store. So, what are you waiting for? Until next time, may you be peaceful, may you be present, and may you discover the profound joy that comes from living from your deepest center. This has been the Empowerment Hour. I'm your host, Joss Blake, reminding you that peace is not just possible, it's your birthright.